will have their video turned off, so they won't show up on the stream. If you have the stream open, make sure that it's muted so we don't get any double audio.
Alex, the transcripts we see in the conference in that document, that's coming from the live transcription?
Yeah.
You mean the subtitle in Zoom?
In the conference website.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, those are from Amanda, who's the closed captioner for us. She's in the Zoom room here as well. So she's live captioning it.
Oh yes. Oh hi, Amanda. So you do that? All right. Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, because it seems to come through faster. The words come before the people say them. It's like
that's the delay that we're seeing, because there's like a 3 to 5 second delay between Zoom and the YouTube, but the closed captioning bypasses those seconds. So that's why the captioners look omniscient and like, no, whatever it's called.
Yeah, it was pretty clear it was not automatic from the quality.
There were a few speakers who put in a lot of ers and ahs and incomplete sentences, and the captioners just got frustrated, I think.
No pressure then. I mean, I feel like okay, I have to behave like
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, take out my ums, please.
So Mark, when the talks are over and you're done, are you just sort of handing over to me for the panel? Is that the idea? Yeah.
Well, I don't think I need to hand over, right? Or
Who does that then?
Hop in after the last.
I'll just hop in. Okay, so I introduce myself. Okay, that's fine.
After when Kachun finishes, why don't you just come on in?
Sure. Okay. That's fine.
I'm just fishing out the Slido link, so I'll post that in the chat here, so that everyone can open it separately, so we don't have to look at it on the conference page.
Hi everyone, I'm a tech student volunteer, and I'd like to give you just a small head up. We're going live in 2 minutes. Please turn off your camera and audio, and only presenters and session chair, please you turn on your camera. Thank you so much. And I'm going to do a countdown, 10-second countdown before we going live. We're going live in 20 seconds, and I'm gonna do a 10-second countdown, and we'll do the last 5 seconds countdown through the Zoom chat. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6.
Hello, and welcome to the Spotlight session, Challenges for Visualization in Immersive Planetarium Domes. I'm one of your organizers. My name is Mark SubbaRao. I work in NASA's Scientific Visualization Studio. I'm also the past president of the International Planetarium Society. And my other organizers in this session are Alex Bock and Anders Ynnerman. And we've got a really nice lineup, some interesting talks of people who are pushing the boundaries of what's possible in a planetarium, and a panel discussion with some of the leaders in the field. And we'll talk more about that in a bit, but I think the way we wanted to frame this session was as an invitation to the visualization community to get more involved in what's happening in planetariums, sort of connect these two communities. And for many reasons, we think that planetariums are a very special place for visualization. To many of you, you probably have a sort of old-fashioned notion of what a planetarium is. Planetariums are approaching their centennial. So they've been around. I think the first planetarium was demoed in 1923. This is the Adler Planetarium, where I worked for many years in Chicago. But they've now transformed themselves into these highly capable, large, immersive display facilities. And what we want to talk about is, what are some of the challenges to having these things reach their full potential? In some ways, they're very unique things. They're places where people come willingly, they're free choice learning environments, to view scientific visualizations to learn more about science. They're also large facilities. The largest planetarium in the world is Planetarium 1 in St. Petersburg. It's a 37-meter diameter dome. It fits more than 700 people at a time. These are highly capable visualization environments. We're talking resolutions vary from site to site, but at the high end, they're 8,000, even 10,000 pixels across the full diameter of the dome. They're run by sophisticated visualization systems, the software that I'm calling space engines. These are typically meant for astronomy purposes. They've built in models of the visible universe, stars, galaxies, planets, planetary terrain. We can model them in space and time. We can model scales from the surface of a planet out to the edge of the observable universe. And this software also enables you to load in your own material, your own models, your own, even in some cases, even create your own visualizations. Now, I think there are two things that have really set back the advancement of visualization in the planetarium. And one of those is what I referenced earlier, this notion of what a planetarium is that's somewhat old-fashioned because of its history. But the other is this transition that's come from the transition to digital planetaria. Also initially came with systems that were, commercial vendors with sort of black box systems and pretty locked down. We're seeing a transition there as well. And we'll hear some examples about that today. That's both in terms of open source software. We'll see, for example, the project Open Space. The image of me in the bottom is running software called Worldwide Telescope. And also the hardware is opening as well. So now you can bring your own custom application, plug your laptop, and display that directly on a modern planetarium dome. And the other thing that makes planetariums special is that they're widespread across the globe. There are now more than 3,000 planetariums in the world, the new ones, incredible facilities opening every day. So quite likely there is in your city a major immersive large visualization facility. And I believe our argument is that we really should start treating it as such. So what we're going to hear about in the talks and in the panel discussion is how people are pushing forward on some of these major challenges to enable this vision. I thought I would kick that off with three things that I'm particularly interested in. One is how do we take advantage of this as an interactive display platform? Like how do we enable large group interaction inside a planetarium? When planetariums first made this transition to digital, there were a lot of interesting experiments having to do with buttons on your seat where people could choose your own adventure for a planetarium show, or they could collectively fly a spaceship and navigate. That tended to go away because of the difficulty in crafting those experiences. And actually it was there's been less group interaction in the last decade. Another thing that I've been very interested in is the interaction between planetariums and synchronizing them, creating joint activities. You're seeing an illustration of a concept called dome casting, where we basically treat it like a multiplayer game, and we can pass control of a set of planetariums, dozens across the globe. We're going to hear two talks about advancing scientific research using a planetarium and what's needed to make this happen. Like, how do we make the planetarium a useful tool for data exploration and discovery? I mentioned the fact that it's large, but this large multi-user facility means that I can bring in a large scientific collaboration, and I can interact with their data sets and explore that. But what's needed to do that? We'll talk about things like how do we interface between planetarium software and the software that scientists use to interrogate their data. That sort of interoperability will be a big step. And then the final challenge that I'd like us to address is how can we use planetariums to really move the needle on science communication? And in particular about, we spent the last 2 years dealing with COVID, and how do we create places where the public can gather to have meaningful conversations about science, aided by the visualization capabilities that can help explain complex scientific issues. So whether that's COVID-19, whether it's climate change. To the left, you'll see an image where we took a portable planetarium to the United Nations Environmental Programs meeting, and talked about climate change to the delegates there. I think a great example of what's possible is coming with the public's understanding of the issue facing all of us with the mega constellations of satellites that are being proposed. These will have a dramatic view on what our night sky looks like. And it's something the public is largely unaware of. Can a planetarium be a place where, guided by visualizations that explain this science, we actually engage in these dialogues? But all the speakers will have their own challenges as well, and we'll be interested in hearing from them. So we're gonna start with these three talks. First, Lucia Marchetti will explain some really, I think, the forefront sort of examples of trying to use a planetarium as a scientific visualization tool. That happens is not just true in astronomy, but it's true across disciplines. And we'll hear more about from Tom Kwasniewska, who will talk about using that dome as a tool for ocean science. And then Kachun Yu, who will talk about, do these things really work? What's the advantage of the modalities offered by these immersive facilities? So let's get that started, and I'll hand things over to Lucia.
Thanks, Mark. Hi, everyone. Thanks for this nice introduction, Mark. Really, you make the point. So let me share my presentation and we can get going. All right, do you see it clearly? Can someone? Yeah, okay, thanks. Okay, so hi everyone, I'm Lucia Marchetti and I'm a senior lecturer in astronomy at the University of Cape Town in South Africa. But I'm also the project scientist within the Idea Visualization Lab that we host in our Department of Astronomy. And so I'm here really, as Mark said, to bring to you our experience in bringing our data set, astronomical, but also multidisciplinary, into a dome environment, but also exploring with VR and the dome. So I hope you will enjoy this different angle. So all what I'm gonna say to you has been also presented in a publication that we recently published in Astronomy and Computing. So I suggest that you also have a look to this publication if you're interested in more details, because I won't have time to explain all of what we have tried to do. So dive in what we do. So if you're not an astronomer, you might not be familiar with our type of data set. So we deal with a lot of data and in a sense that we take images from the sky, but also we work with, their derived properties of what we observe. And these derived property makes up basically very big tables, very big catalog that we then want to investigate in the best way possible. These catalogs and these images are growing in size, and according to the instrument that you use, they become very, very big to the terabyte scale, like for a Meerkat there, which is a radio observatory that is paving the way to the SKA, which is the largest radio observatory that will never ever be built up in South Africa and in the world, actually. So our data are multi-parameters. So really, we want to exploit the visualization into the multi-parameter space, and the planetarium or VR are really what we really want to do to explore our data set. But there are some challenges, so I'm gonna go through that. So the Idea Visualization Lab has this goal really to exploit these different environments for our data visualization, and that's our website if you want to go and have a look to what we do. The first tool that I'm going to present is the Immersive Planetarium, which is a digital planetarium that has been recently upgraded in Cape Town, and is a powerful machine, possibly the most powerful machine across the African continent. This is it. This is the beautiful planetarium from the outside. Very nice location. I hope you can come and visit us one day. So this is our system. So we run two computers clusters, one that is devoted to production and shows, and the other one that we use only for research. This decision was made really because we didn't want to mess up with the shows that the planetarium, the show must go on, even us as a researcher might fizzle too much with the system. Each cluster has 14 computers. They run on NVIDIA P6000 GPUs, and those drive 6 4K Sony laser projector in our dome that sits about 140 people. So it's a medium-sized dome. We are running Skyscan as a primary contractor, so we have dark matter installed, if you're familiar with that. But we, as a research facility, we are looking into various software. So how we are ingesting our data? Well, there is a pipeline that we always follow. So as I said, we do have tables. Our tables are usually galaxy table. It means that you do have every row is basically a galaxy that has a position and then possibly a distance attached to that, for example. And you really want to make sure that you are visualizing this dot in the multi-parameter space, associating colors and properties, but also in the 3D distribution of these objects, so in space. So what we do, we do need to do a little bit of work on our usual formats to make it, to be ingested in the software. But then we create what is called assets so that everybody as a user can just press that button and have this script running in the dome. And then we are just fizzling around with some, calibrate and coloring and so on and so forth. And when we're happy, we deploy it and we can interrogate the data. So our first exercise has been looking into, as what I said, like galaxies distribution in the sky. Here is just a 2D version of what you can do, because as I said, galaxies are distributed in spaces, so you do have a position, but then each galaxy will have a different location in distance. And of course, I mean, we in 2D doesn't make the place, and this is just an image of, again, a 2D images to show you that galaxies tend to cluster, but the properties of this clustering needs to be investigated still, and we are still investigating them, and there are a lot of them across the sky. So you really want to get this going and study all the clustering properties all together, possibly in an all sky view, okay? So that you can put together what we call the cosmic web, where galaxies position themselves into this web that permeate the skies. So there are plots that you can do, you know, you can diversify your galaxies according to the clustering properties. And of course, that's a way that we do. So you can have galaxies that are redder in color. So imagine a red galaxies that looks like they are clustering more than blue galaxies, which are galaxies that are more active in their activities. But, you know, it's a little bit dry. So we do experiment with the idea of visualizing the properties of these galaxies connecting, and this is from a paper that Tom Jarrett published in 2017. You already see that there is some 3D here uptemp. Every sphere and every bone, as we like, indicate where you do have a property of clustering of galaxies, so group of galaxies that are bounded, you know, by the gravitation potential. But then if you bring that to the dome, this is what you can do to visualize it. So on the left, you see those spheres. That's a data set that we brought into the dome. The spheres indicate where these galaxies are actually located and clustering. And on the right, you see the same visualization, but with the bones. And then you can move through the data set and really start to explore these phenomena from a 3D perspective. But as I said, galaxies has different properties, so you can decide to show them according to their colors that are a measurement of their mass as well, so how big they are. And this is how, you know, you could play around with the different parameters in a planetarium like we did. This is really a video recorded in the dome. So that's how we start wandering around this beautiful sky. We did also bring some cosmological simulation into the dome. This is only a screenshot because the video actually would, well, recording this was very difficult because this simulation is so big that basically made our system crashed. And that's one of the challenges that we have when we try to bring these very big multi-million you know, particles inside a dome. We tend to crash our system, even though it's very powerful. And each dot in this case is a gas particle that we are trying to follow in their movement to see when they crash, and basically they start forming stars and then eventually galaxies. And on the left there, you see that each of that is a little vector that indicate the position of movement of this particle, and the module of the vector gives the speed. So really all these parameters is something that we would like to explore, but it's been very, very challenging with such a big data set in our dome. As I said, we do multidisciplinary. In this case, you do see a mouse cerebellum floating in space. This is a collaboration with the University of Stellenbosch. This is a heat map, so it's actually a data cube, you can imagine, of a heat map of a mouse cerebellum. And what they were looking at was the part of the brain of the mouse that was highlighting because of a stimul, an external stimul. And it's just to bring some art into the dome. If I didn't say to you that this was shot in the dome, you would think that we were at the Scrovegni Chapel in Italy, but actually this was shot in Cape Town. So you can see already how powerful it is to bring this such amazing data set into even an art class, if you want. Okay, we do experiment with other tools though, and I'm gonna come through that. So we do have a little Cobra, as we call it, that basically does a sort of semi-dome experience. And that is really helpful for us because before we go to the planetarium, which is actually detached from the university, which is also another challenges that we are experiencing, we can go there with a data set that is already processed and ready to be shown. But also we do interact with virtual reality, and we are developing a virtual reality software suite that is called iDavy. Now, this is, started as an unrelated project to the Dome, but then we brought VR into the Dome. And as you can see in the different flavor of the software suite, we do have what we call iDavy D, which is bringing the iDavy software into the Dome. And right now we have developed mostly iDavy V, which is the volume rendering aspect of this. And why we do virtual reality? Well, I'm going to scan through this, but this is why. Okay, so in astronomy, we have this data cube. They have a meaning, a physical meaning. So you have that on one side, you have the positions of your galaxies, and then on the z-axis, you have the velocity, which is the velocity of the gas that trace the position of this galaxy, and the distortion of the shape. So if I play it around, so something like this, which is a 2D plot of this warping of the disk of a spiral galaxies. Now you have to use your imagination if you've never seen it, but you can imagine a disk that is warped. Now you would immediately see it in VR because you are looking into the 3D properties of these. So we have developed this software. You can investigate, so you can wandering around, moving the software, moving your data set, explore it, do operation. And that, of course, this is the VR environment in which we develop it. But then we realized that while we were doing it, they say, but VR is a very solitary space. I mean, it's an immersive environment, but it's very difficult to share your experiences. So we were wondering how we can bring this immersive experience to a large audience of a colleague. Okay, so well, this is the release of the iDavy. I suggest you go to iDavyreadthedocs.io. So you can also download our software for free for now. It is not beta version, but it's working. So if you have a headset, you can play around. And there are publications already showing that this type of visualization works. And that's very important because also for the data to Dome effort and bringing data to the Dome, it's very important to see how the scientific outcome, works out thanks to this immersive environment. But as I said, we wanted to bring VR to the Dome. So we did this experiment of, thanks to a PhD student of ours that is working with us, Alex Civitili. So he thought, okay, you are in VR, you don't have really the feeling of where your audience is because you are, immersed in your VR environment. So he did create this mock planetarium that you will visualize in VR while you're running your software. And you then will see where your audience is sitting and where it's facing. So you basically, you are a little ghost like there on the right that brings the data to the audience and walk around with them using VR. So I'm gonna play very quickly these two videos so you have a feeling of what it looks like. So on the left is what you see while you are in VR, and on the right is what the audience see when is sitting into the planetarium. And you see that, I mean, unfortunately in 2D it doesn't make justice, but really you do experience the environment, the VR environment, the immersive environment, thanks to the Dome. And similarly, sorry, I need to skim. Okay, and similarly, if you are doing your analysis with the software like iDavy, you can then do also research. You can do calculation and share that with the Dome. So this is in a nutshell what we have tried to do. There are some challenges, and I just want to close my talk, just saying that it's a process to bring data to the Dome. You have to think about the different problems that your software that the planetarium is running might have to handle your data. And, it's not an immediate passage. So I think this process should be, to enhance the process should be streamlined a little bit better. We do need software to do that easily translate the data set into the asset that we need into the Dome. As well as, coming from Africa, we are very cost sensitive to the software development that in the planetarium. And when you are approaching the problem, you do want to have this research facility, you want to pay the cost for something that really is flexible enough to enable this type of research. And we have seen that this flexibility is not as, as you like in most of the software that we try, but I'm sure the open space is solving some of the issues for us. So I'm really eager to see how everything is worked out. And that's me. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucia. All right.
Okay, shall I just go on?
Yeah, why don't you start, Tom?
Probably. Okay. Check. I hope you can see my screen now. Okay, so I'm a marine researcher, meaning that I'm a geologist by training, not an astrophysicist. I have a background in planetarium work though, and my big dream, my goal was to bring this sort of visualization into the realm of ocean science, which we did in the last 10 years or so. And this is the facility that we run right now. It's a 6-meter dome, variable tilt, and there's a lot of different things that you can do in it. It's a 5-channel system, similar to the one that we've just seen, pretty much just smaller. And here you have a view of what it looks like inside. We are not open to the public, but the facility is only meant for research. And the typical setup that we run is that we have a group of maybe 4 or 5 researchers, as you can see here. They book time in the dome, they go there and they start discussing their data as they would if they were in the field, for example. As I said, I'm a trained field geologist, and we've always been trying to replicate the situation that you have if you're out in the country looking at some outcrop or some mountain. And the most prolific way to work there is if you discuss with your peers. And this is the kind of thing we try to replicate. Being ocean scientists, we cannot go to the study places that we actually want to visit because we cannot walk on the seafloor. So there is a very strong urge to do this digitally. Basically, we have 2 sorts of data sets. Either the ones where we want to spatially immerse ourselves, we want to port ourselves onto the seafloor. And the other one is if we have abstract data sets, as you would encounter them in astrophysics, stuff that doesn't work with embodiment. So this is the general setup of our system. And as I said in the title, we actually have a palette of tools that we can bring in here. Not everything you see here is operational in our dome, but it can be made operational through a number of dirty tricks that we apply here. So essentially, there is no computer visualization science in Kiel, where we are situated. So it was obvious to us that we couldn't start a big in-house software development of our own. Instead, we went with what industry offered us, and we decided to, for the first years of this lab, run existing tools against each other and figure out where the delta in development would actually lie for us. And the way we did this is the following. I'm just going to show you a quick run through a couple of the applications that we run here. For example, to start out with, first and foremost, our dome is a cinema of sorts. So we have a 4K by 4K projection screen, as I said, with 5 channels and a very powerful 60 Hertz stereo video server system behind it. And not in the least of all deployments, we use it to actually look at seafloor imagery. My group also develops very high resolution cameras for work on the seafloor, so-called full dome live action, full dome video camera systems. So we actually bring down these fisheye cameras to the seafloor, record. I guess by tomorrow, the camera will actually be done, record 4K by 4K from a diving robot, which we operate in-house. And then we bring back this footage and look at it in the dome for scientific purposes. But not just that, we also have a lot of real-time software systems that we employ. Among them is OpenSpace, which we enriched with a couple of specialized layers for especially the ocean basin bathymetry rendering. That's a very popular thing in demos, but also among our scientists. We also run popular visualization software like ParaView natively in the dome. Recently, we've also started with in-house software development. So this is actually a web-based clustered digital globe, the digital Earth viewer. So basically what you do is you have a cluster of 5 channels, 5 computers behind them. On each computer, you start a web page, and through WebGL and communication between those machines, you populate the dome with a seamless image, and we can actually run within limits simulation data in there. The reason to do that is not just because it is ultra portable. It was actually developed to run on laptops first, and then we ported it into the dome. It also means that it requires absolutely no installation of a dome projection system in terms of software. And that is important, keeping in mind that a lot of these dome systems actually run under a very fierce vendor lock-in. Those dome system vendors, if you bought from a vendor, usually don't like you to install other software because they can't maintain the functionality of the system. So with this, you are actually completely non-invasive, and it's astonishing what you can do in terms of geoscientific visualization just from a WebGL basis. So the other thing is we are capable of running OpenGL-based, desktop-based scientific visualization software in our dome, not by spreading the pixels across the dome, but actually by reinterpreting the OpenGL buffer, so, which is very interesting because it means that a lot of the well-established scientific visualization software that we use in our everyday work can be brought into the dome, and we don't actually have that intermediate effort of adapting data from everyday software to dome software. It's all the same. The way we do this is through capturing the OpenGL buffer that the software generates in order to fill the desktop, and then distribute this to a specialized render cluster, which opens up the host of different applications that you see here. Most prominently, you can actually composite software on top of each other. You do this with more than one software that share a common reference in the geospatial domain, and you can actually Photoshop together visualization software. And this is what I mean if I say we run the features of existing packages against each other to first find out what is actually needed in terms of in-house development before we actually do. So a bit of homework. What we found was that starting on the left with our 2 big video server machines, we had to expand the system to a cluster-based architecture in hindsight, because we found that a lot of the visualization software that we actually wanted to run and wanted to implement wouldn't really support running several channels from one machine, especially once it comes down to performance. So we decided to go, if you want, so the old-fashioned way and still work with a cluster. The other thing is, and the reason why we can bring in so much scientific software, is that we actually treat most of it as a tiled display application. So if you think about a projection cave with its 5 walls of very easily defined frustums spaced 90 degrees apart, or a tiled display wall where you have 1 channel per display. The trick to get into the dome is to do the warping and blending by something like the NV API by NVIDIA, to do that warping and blending on the graphics card. So we actually only tell the software that it runs on an oddly shaped tile display wall with oddly shaped frustums and angles. But apart from that, all the warping and blending is done on the graphics card level. And that, for example, works for us with software like ParaView and also that web-based thing for the time being. So now the challenge for us is to bring all of this to other domes that don't have this very specific infrastructure. Also, as Lucia pointed out before me, this is stuff that you don't find in your average planetarium dome that your collaborator might want to use. And the solution that we are working on right now is simply dome streaming, by which I mean you gather the video feeds that run to the projectors, stitch them like you would do in a VR camera rig. It is actually considerably more difficult than that. And then you stream this likely 4K by 4K stream to other domes where you reverse the process and have your colleagues share, at least passively, share your experience in real time. And that's it from my side. Thanks a lot. Okay.
Thanks so much, Tom. We've got a question for before Kachun starts. We've got a couple of questions in the chat. One for you. Why is it this is from Tracy. Why is it always in a dome? Can it be any roof, walls, or floors of ordinary buildings?
We used to have an inverted dome. So the simulator before this one was actually a salad bowl where you could walk in with two people. We found that we couldn't support enough audience in there and that people would get motion sick much more easily.
And then a question from Alex, which I think I'll direct this to Lucia. What is the utilization rate of the dome? Is it busy most of the time? If yes, how do you ensure researchers actually use it, since it requires booking, bringing everyone across campus, using special tools to import data, etc.?
Thanks. Yeah, that's a very good point. So in our case, when we did the upgrade of the planetarium, there was an agreement that since the government and the Research and Innovation Department brought in money for the refurbishment as well as the university, we basically have one full day dedicated per week to the research consortium that can go and use the planetarium as they please. The rest of time is dedicated to shows, but on a weekly basis, we basically agree on the use of the planetarium if we need, or we have a meeting coming up. I mean, there is an agreement with the planetarium that we can use it. Of course, having the planetarium on campus, it will be much easier, and bringing the researcher to the planetarium is also an effort. So that's for sure. So, but it depends on what you do in the dome. If you do something really interesting, people will come, and we do see people are very interested. And during the week, the planetarium is always used. Yeah, of course.
I briefly second this. This is exactly the reason why we built it on premise, because people would not go to the planetarium, which is 800 meters away from our institute, the other dome that we have on premise.
Yep. So if you're thinking to be at the planetarium and you are at a university, maybe you should leverage for have it on campus, but that's a general comment.
All right, thank you. All right, Kachun, why don't you start? Kachun, I'm afraid we can't hear you.
All right, here you go.
All right, that sounds better.
That okay? Okay. Sorry about that. I had different audio source. Okay, so I want to begin. I'm just talking about why you would use domes for teaching astronomy, and turns out that astronomy is an extremely difficult topic for the general public to learn. The main reason is that the phenomena that you are trying to teach, these physical systems, are very remote. People don't have immediate firsthand understanding of them, and so they can't be really experienced directly. You can see positions of astronomical bodies, but that seeing them doesn't give you an immediate understanding of their three-dimensional relationships. And so as a result, a big part of astronomy instruction is building mental models of the phenomenon that you are trying to learn about. And if in case something goes wrong with your mental model building, a mistake creeps in, it can be very difficult to change that model. And so I've, and along with many others, have advocated using visualizations in immersive environments, such as domes, to teach topics like astronomy. And this goes back to the idea of space engines, which Mark talked about in his introduction to the session. And what you can do with visualization software in planetariums is you can show, for instance, multiple frames of reference. You can provide viewers in the audience with egocentric as well as exocentric viewpoints, being able to show perspectives inside as well as outside of the models that you're simulating, and having multiple perspectives like that have been shown to be effective for learning. And then, of course, being able to go through different spatial and temporal scales. And all of these aspects of immersive visualizations are aspects that aren't really found in traditional instruction. And in the last decade or so, there has been quite a bit of research, education research involving domes, although not as much as with traditional virtual reality. And so for domes, we see that they can be combined with kinesthetic techniques to improve learning. Domes have been shown to be very good for 3D spatial learning. They're also good for improving attitudes about the topic of instruction. And there have also been a number of studies that have been comparison studies, where you compare a digital dome to some other medium. So for instance, they've been shown to be better than traditional classroom instruction. And they've also been shown to be better than if you were to show similar content on a flat display shown to the entire classroom. And they've also been shown to be better than if you were to show it on an individual computer monitor that's used by each student. And there are also some evidence to show that they're more effective than giant screen films like IMAX. Now, with enough studies to show that domes do seem to be effective, the next question we could ask may be, what factors about these domes, what about these domes actually make them more effective than other educational paradigms? And to go more in detail into answering this question, I'm going to just describe some research that I've been involved in, my Astronomy Learning in Immersive Virtual Environments project. And I just need to describe how this project is set up. What we did was to bring in college students into the planetarium at the Denver Museum of Nature and Science, and they were divided into 3 different groups. So a control group, which received traditional instruction without the use of any visualizations. A second group that saw visualizations in their classroom, so projected onto a flat screen on the wall. And then finally, the third group that actually entered the dome. And we had, depending on the study, between 700 and 800 students involved, and to assess how well they were doing, how much learning was taking place. We had weekly assessments, tests that were undertaken before instruction. So we knew how much they understood before they received instruction, how much they understood the week contemporaneous with instruction. And then finally, they also received a post-test, typically between 3 to 5 weeks after they received instruction. And so here are the results for the topic of seasons. And what I'm going to do now is just focus on the data points, the blue data points, which correspond to the learning gains. So basically, these are post minus pre-instructional scores. And you can see we have the 3 groups subdivided. So on the left, you have group 1, which is the traditional instruction, group 2, visualizations in the classroom, and finally group 3 in the dome. And the group 1 results, they actually do show some strong results, but unfortunately this group had a smaller size than the smaller end, less than 100 students compared to the other 2 groups. And so even though there was a moderate effect size, the 95% confidence intervals, which are what the error bars are, they remain pretty large. Now, if we go to the classroom group that saw visualizations, they had a moderate effect size, which dropped slightly between the week of instruction and then several weeks later. But the dome group showed, again, a somewhat moderate effect size, but stronger than the other ones, with not much of a drop between instruction and later on. And as far as what we think is going on, in this case, as far as seasons go, it seems like the flat screens inside the classroom do have more limitations compared to the dome. You're dealing with a display that has lower resolution, which is filled with more content. So instead of spreading the content out, it's crammed into a much smaller field of view. And so as a result, we think students are able to see what they're supposed to be learning about better in a display that surrounds them, as opposed to something that tends a much smaller field of view in front of them. And then another aspect of this is that, at least for understanding this topic of seasons, it requires spatial understanding of the positions of the sun and sky at different times of the day and different times of the year. And so in the dome, you can immediately understand where the sun is and how it moves, whereas in the classroom, you actually lose a lot of this information because you've crammed or you've shrunk the perspective down to make it fit into the display. And so we argue that domes basically help reduce the cognitive load of the learners, where you don't have to think about the position of the objects that you're trying to track. All that information is right there for you to see, whereas the learner in the classroom have to digest that information and keep it in their minds in order to make sense of what they are seeing. Now, another paradigm for planetariums is to basically fly the audience around and to explore the virtual simulation. This is something that is commonly done in pretty much all planetariums that teach astronomy using visualization software. And so the audience just sits and they watch and they listen to the presenter, they listen to the audio track. And what's interesting about this particular narrative model is that if you compare a classroom version of this experience versus a dome experience, there are obviously no spatial benefits from seeing this in the dome. And so because you're seeing the same visual content, you should have very similar effects in the classroom versus the planetarium. But that's actually not the case. So what we found for a narrative, so-called narrative journey style presentation on the topic of solar system moons, we actually see small effect size, small gain for students in the classroom watching a flat, non-immersive view of the visualizations. But we see a much larger effect size when you do the post minus pre comparison. And what's really interesting is that the effect has grown from when you compare it to the assessment that was taken during the week of instruction. And then on another similar module where we discussed the scale of the solar system using kind of a powers of 10 type of narrative, you again see a small effect for the classroom group, and you see a much larger effect with the dome group, with that effect growing given time. And so just to jump to the conclusion and what we think are the takeaways, I think the major takeaway is that having a wide field of view is actually really important. And the reason why, I mean, first of all, from that season's work, we think that the wide field of view helps spatial understanding because it reduces the cognitive load of the students as they try to understand the positions of objects around them. But in this, the last two papers, what we think is happening is that because you have this journey where you're flying around this virtual simulation, you also have this experience of optic flow, where you have objects flowing past, coming from the front and flowing past you towards your periphery. And so that stimulates your peripheral vision, which has been shown in other studies to lead to greater attention. And so what we think is happening is that one of the big benefits of domes is that by stimulating your peripheral vision, you're basically making the audience pay more attention to what is going on. And so this is my really quick, brief summary of astronomical education research with domes. And hopefully you get a sense of some of the factors that we think actually make domes effective. Thank you.
Thank
Okay,
you.
great.
Thank you, Kachun. There's a question for you in the chat. What do you think the reason for the increase between the post minus continuous, was that, and the post minus pre is? People are more interested in learning on their own? Is that what's happening? We lost your audio again. Oh, you're muted.
I'm just too Zoom conscious about that. But yeah, unfortunately, that's a really good question. But unfortunately, that wasn't something that we looked at in our study. We were looking at kind of large aggregate numbers of students, and we did do some initial pre-assessments where we interviewed students. But unfortunately, we didn't really look at what students did in between, whether they spent more time in their textbooks or whether they did more learning by themselves. And a follow-up study, it would be interesting to have an even longer follow-up where the follow-up took place after they left the class, and to see whether these gains held over time. Because typically, even for in cases where substantial learning takes place and you see increased gains sometime after, if you wait long enough, those gains start to get whittled away. But it would be interesting for a follow-up to see, at what point that decrease in learning takes place, and to see what additional attempts students are making to supplement their learning because they've had an increased interest in the topic.
And there are some, there have been other studies showing, an increase in retention in the dome and in related environments. So I think that's very exciting. All right, so I think let's hand this over to the panel presentation. And so Anders, do you want to take that away?
Sure, great. Thank you very much for these very inspiring presentations. I thought I would, before we initiate the panel, I'd just take a few moments to also provide you with a little bit of the context for myself and also for Alex Bock. And in some sense, we are a bridge between the visualization community and also the planetarium and dome domain. So just to make that point a little bit clearer from Alex and myself, I just wanted to share with you a few slides just showing the facility and the environment that we are sitting in and how we are creating that bridge. So let me share my slides with you. So we're located at the Norrköping Visualization Center, and what I really wanted to show you is the setup of the Visualization Center in terms of how we have within the same organization fundamental research on visualization, computer graphics, and media. Approximately 100 people working in this environment on the research side, but also we are engaging in public outreach and dissemination through exhibit areas, a science center, museum, and of course a dome theater. So it's the Visualization Center is a relatively large entity at this point, and we've been around for almost 10 years. Of course, we're very proud of the dome theater that we have put in place, hidden inside of one of the old factory buildings here, seating about 100 people, tilt these slightly forward 27 degrees and seating 99 people in it. We're also very fortunate to very recently have upgraded our dome. So we're the first 6P laser stereo system in a dome. And it's an amazing experience to be immersed in by the laser projection systems and do that with stereoscopic viewing. So I would really like to invite many of you to come and visit us and experience the visual quality that we can get out of a dome theater today. Now, of course, being in the dome is a wonderful, amazing experience. And we actually had a very nice event yesterday as a part of the Norrköping satellite. We invited all the participants who had locally people here and also traveled to Norrköping to join us for a dome session yesterday. And I just wish that the whole visualization community could have been there with us and experience and appreciate both the data and the science that we bring into the dome, but also the beauty of being immersed inside of these environments. So one of the projects that I also wanted to just show you a slide of here that we are working very intensely on is the Open Space project, and we're very proud to have a number of partners in this project. We have the Goddard Space Flight Center, we have AMNH, and we have a few representatives from the museum here with us on the panel today. We have the Ski Institute at the University of Utah, and we also have NYU as partners, and it's technically coordinated then from the Norrköping Visualization Center. And of course, Alex Bock, who is one of the organizers of this panel, is the lead developer of the open space software. There's also another project I wanted to mention called Wisdom that you may hear more of in the future. We are developing a number of themes to bring data visualization to the dome and do public outreach based on that, but also develop the scientific content in itself. And that's a very exciting project that we have significant funding from the Wallenberg Foundation in Sweden. So just to give you a little bit of a background for Alex and myself, where we come from. And with that, we will move into the panel. And if I can get all the panel members joining me here, we have an amazing panel with a number of people who have experience of bringing data to the dome. And I would just like to invite them to say a few words about themselves, to introduce them, because they may not be as familiar to this community. So we start off with Dana Thompson from Ball State University. Would you like to introduce yourself just with a few words?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Dana Thompson, the director of the Brown Planetarium here at Ball State University. We have a 16-meter dome. It makes us the largest dome in Indiana, and we can project onto that dome using 2 4K digital projectors. We're open to local school groups, the public, and of course, Ball State faculty, students, and staff.
Great, thank you very much, Dana. And also with us, we have Jackie Farty from AMNH. So we can get you online here.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jackie Farty. I'm a kind of combination person. I'm a PhD astrophysicist that works in astrophysical research in a major way, but I'm also an educator at the American Museum of Natural History. I'm in both departments, actually. And we have a dome, the image, which is my background, I'm going to talk about during the panel. So every time you see me, look and enjoy this image. And I am very excited to discuss this project that I'm passionate about how we need to use domes more for scientific research, especially as somebody that is a scientist in such a great facility.
Mm-hmm. Great, thanks very much, Jackie. We also have from AMNH also we have Carter Emmett online. So Carter, please.
Thank you. I'm the Director of Astrovisualization, which is kind of a big word at AMNH, but I joined the museum in 1998 when we were rebuilding the Hayden Planetarium. And the concept, as our director, Neil deGrasse Tyson, likes to point out, is we wanted to explore what the planetarium could be for the 21st century. And so we were moving from essentially stars on the ceiling to immersive 3D data visualization to explore the known universe. And we do that in our show productions and as well as with Open Space, which actually evolved as a collaboration between Anders and I starting in around 2002. So that's about it. And I'm glad to work with Jackie, other scientists in our Department of Astrophysics, part of our Earth and Planetary Science division at the museum.
And also finally on the panel, we have Ryan Wyatt from California Academy.
Thanks, it's great to be here this morning. I am the Senior Director of the Morrison Planetarium at the California Academy of Sciences and also Science Visualization at the Academy. The Academy is a little bit of an anomaly even amongst natural history museums in having a very strong focus on regeneration and playing an active role in environmental topics. So we are a natural history museum that focuses a lot on how we can make the world a more regenerative place. That means that the planetarium tells an interesting story, where it's a large planetarium tilted a little bit more than the one that Anders showed in North Shipping. It's tilted about 30 degrees. It's a little bit more like an IMAX theater, about 23 meters in diameter, and seats about 300 people. And because of our institutional focus, we create a lot of our own content. And a lot of it is around environmental and sustainability topics. And we kind of do mostly traditional sort of visual effects kind of work for film kind of production, but we're engaged more and more in doing some of the real-time kind of work that we've been talking about, and that's what I'm hoping to share as we talk more today.
Great, thank you very much. A wonderful panel to have with us, and I would also like to encourage people to put in your questions in Slido. If you have direct questions, I'll try to read them out here to the panel as we go along. But let me go back to Dana and start off with, I know that you have done a lot of work on STEM and outreach, and you have a very long-term experience of this, but also looking at sort of the impact of the dome experience. And can you just say a few words about your experiences of this?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Just a little bit more background on myself. I do have a background in physics. I have a master's degree in physics. I did research in astronomy, which led me to working in a planetarium. But since then, of course, things have shifted a little bit, and I'm more focused on science communication. So part of our university strategic plan, we have these goals focused on promoting a transdisciplinary approach to learning and also on community engagement. And the community engagement part is relatively easy. We've been doing that for a very long time, but the transdisciplinary education work is a bit more difficult, right? And when I think of transdisciplinary work, I think of it being a step up from interdisciplinary, where there's this overlap of disciplines and topics. And instead, for transdisciplinary, it's this full merger of disciplines where we can promote more of a world view. It includes stakeholders in the work, and it affects society, right? So for me and my work, planetariums and science communication are just key to tackling these so-called wicked problems that are being defined in transdisciplinary work. And I think that communication, science communication, and community engagement fits in really well to this. So as a planetarian, as a science communicator, we engage with the public. Community engagement, by the way, doesn't have to include just a younger audience. Of course, we see preschoolers in the planetarium. We saw some today, actually, but the audience can also include policymakers, teachers, professional groups, and so on. So because one of our goals is to work to keep the public engaged in the scientific process and to help build an informed, questioning public, we hope that we have conversations in the dome where we're creating kind of this new wave of voices emerging into the public sphere and participating in these really difficult conversations in an educated way, and hopefully making a global impact when having these national conversations. So to summarize some of the work I've been doing recently, we've been partnering with many different units across campus to bring classes into the planetarium and to work on specialized projects. For instance, beyond physics and astronomy, we bring in geography, architecture, computer science, but also less data-driven classes like music and theater and dance and the languages department, for instance. But we have these partnerships and they're wonderful. We create shows with these partners. We brought those classes into the dome. But we struggle sometimes with making these long-lasting partnerships. And that's why, you know, perhaps these partnerships can really be added to perhaps grant proposals for the public engagement component, and therefore like the broader impacts part of it, to help teams communicate the importance of their work. But beyond grant proposals, I've developed something here at Ball State, this experiment we're calling the Integrated Cultural Committee. And through this committee, we're hoping to not just start conversations and start these partnerships, but have them last for a very long time and really see them move beyond, you know, a 6-month project and hopefully not fizzle out before their time, basically. So the Integrated Cultural Committee, just to summarize, we have the planetarium a part of it, the Art Museum, the Office of Community Engagement here. We have the Institute for Digital Intermedia Arts a part of it, a representative from the Muncie Community Schools. We have athletics even a part of it. So it's all these different components, these different units on campus coming together to really make sure that everyone is benefiting from the work we're doing, which is important when you're working on strategic partnerships, right? We've been working for about 2 years now, and we're mostly focused on unifying our events and advertising, but hopefully this partnership, this concrete committee with goals and a plan will provide us with an avenue to collaborate better for the long term. And hopefully our collaboration will grow in a way that helps us move towards more continuous work on transdisciplinary projects and so on.
That's great. I mean, it's this conversation, so I can certainly sympathize with that. It's the conversation and the dialogue that you have with potential users and stakeholders. That's what sort of builds these alliances. So it's very, very good to hear that from you as well. Now, moving on to Jackie here. You're one of the people who have been using the dome extensively as a research tool, and I just wanted to ask you a little bit the motivation for that and what you have seen coming out of those sessions that you have in the dome, and what kind of insights you gain from the dome that you otherwise wouldn't get.
Yeah, and I can also build also a little bit on what Dana was saying, in that, to just reiterate, I'm heavily immersed in astrophysical research. So I work on everything from the lowest mass stars, brown dwarfs, these objects in between stars and planets, in really detailed structure of what they look like, all the way out to large scale kind of structure in the galaxy. Like, where is everything located? How is it moving? What are the details of that? Low mass stars all the way through. I tend to pinpoint on the lowest mass objects as my like absolute direction that I go scientifically, but I take the biggest possible picture. And as such, I've been successful at winning several National Science Foundation grants, NASA grants to fund my research. And I almost always have in there a component now that talks about the research that I do inside of the Hayden Planetarium, because it can be, it's beneficial for the science. And just to speak to Dana's point, I also discuss how science leads to education moments. So that's especially been successful with the National Science Foundation in saying how the work done visually leads to education, storytelling moments that are cutting edge science for people to also get on the ground floor with you. But to speak also to the science that gets done, I've always been somebody that's been really jealous of other scientists that get to go on field work expeditions like anthropologists or paleontologists, they get to go to Africa and they dig up dinosaur bones. They're like in it. They can look around. They get the feel of what it would have looked like and felt like, maybe like what structures would have been there. And they can look around and see evidence for like other stuff that happened that might be something in the geologic history in the rocks, or some volcano that they didn't realize is like right there, or whatever it is. I was always jealous of that. And in that very simple application is how I move forward on my science, by inviting others with me into the planetarium dome to look at our data. And it's something as simple as, essentially, I think of it as like a field trip expedition where scientific collaboration is ignited by being immersed in the data sets. Now that gets layered in its complication, in the sense that sometimes I want much more out of what the visualization can do for me. And so we're trying to pull in different components of a piece of software that can take us into something different than just projecting us through and taking us on a flight through stellar positions and velocities. But at the very base level, it's being able to see the biggest picture that you can with your data sets. When you're doing something that is like looking at the structure of the galaxy, or even looking at the structure of like a star cluster, think of the Pleiades and where the Pleiades is. Most people don't realize that the Pleiades is kind of around a car accident of star cluster work. And we had a paper, myself, Jonathan Gagne, a graduate student of mine and a graduate student of his, had a paper that came out recently. And the title of it was "Moving Groups Are Fragments of Dissolving Open Clusters," that was largely driven by looking at the data, that the Pleiades basically has this tail of other stars coming off it. We visualized it within the dome / within the software that we bring into the dome. With coronavirus, we haven't really been able to be in the dome to do this, but it was started within the dome, and then we took it to our computers and kept doing it. But we could see it. Fly towards the Pleiades, you look around, you move the stars around, you see what's happening. And then that leads to these great STEM moments as well, as I've had a teacher working with me, and we've been working on building this into some of the presentations we do with the students. So for me, it's field work. It's basically being able to go like a paleontologist does to their field site, look around and look what else is there, and do that with my collaborators and other scientists so that we can talk it out, talk about what's happening, and then use the software to really navigate and move around, and then put on other data sets and see what else is there. And then moving from that, to me, that's been critical component to dome work, the software work, and getting the most out of our data.
That's great, Jackie. Just listening to you makes me want to run straight over to the dome and start looking at data. That's like so inspiring. Yeah, thanks for those comments. So moving on to Carter, who mentioned that we started out this journey together back in 2002, developing interactive experiences in the domes. So you've really been one of the driving forces behind all of this and open space and all the time finding new users and new targets. And I'm particularly interested in how you have been bringing current data and sort of mission data to the dome. And can you tell us a little bit about the motivation for that, how you're doing it, and how it's also relevant to like new audience, like mission teams and experts in this domain?
Yeah, thank you. Why the dome and why data visualization in a way? And it's a way to actually take us, into be surrounded by like in true immersion within the data sets. Working at a museum that has tremendous dioramas that, you would walk around the Tyrannosaurus, but you typically walk up in front of a beautiful diorama that has a nice background, you get a little bit of parallax. But the promise of this job when I took it was really to take data visualization. I'd done a little bit at National Center for Atmospheric Research and be able to, use this form of 3D data visualization to actually transform the planetarium into, at the turn of the millennium is a time when we really got high quality data immersion capabilities. And so the project was very exciting. We can take you to these places effectively, put you there but also you can cover scale. And data visualization is our window, as Jackie says, it's sort of field trip it's not just a field trip of sort of the here and now. I mean, as you look at the universe, the farther out you look, the further back in time you're looking. It's a time machine. Our simulations allow us to look at the behavior across all this. The excitement or actually, let's start with this. It's a disappointment in my life, being born in 1961, that I still haven't gone to the moon. You know, it's 8 years old, we walked on it. And, but what we have done, and this transformation of our knowledge of the solar system, for example, is these missions take us to these places. And so if we could only ride on the backs of one of these vessels in a theater with hundreds of seats and communicate that to other theaters across the world, this is what this is about. This is the P.T. Barnum aspect of data visualization. You see a planetarium with hundreds of seats and you walk in and we take you somewhere. I mean, this is exciting. It does hold your attention, as I think part of Kachun's presentation showed. But this ability to not only ride on the backs of these missions, but then take the results of those missions, like your backdrop, Anders. This is a place in Ganges Chasma on Mars. This is no vertical exaggeration behind you. And these are sulfate mounds about the size, they're a little shy of the Grand Tetons, if you've been there in Wyoming. And but what we've done is we've used the computer graphics to take you there. The CGI but the data visualization, the data that was gathered is true bona fide real data from mission Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, and we go. And we do this in a planetarium, you are there. Now, you might be with Elon Musk and you're going to land in some boring part of Mars. Most of Mars is boring and flat. Whereas, here we have this tremendous resource of what these missions send back with too much to really explore. But then just even touching in on this is the majesty of what this form that we've developed, this immersive data visualization that goes across scale, that goes across time, that we can visit things that we'll never be able to do. We can't go inside a cell, but we can with this form. And we can't look at the entire universe evolve in our lifespan, but with our equations, we can. And with the translation to graphics, we do. So this is what's exciting about this form. And there are problems with it. I could list them. I have a whole list here for today on the panel. But the first part is, this is the excitement of it, that we can really take you places.
We'll publish that list somewhere for the visualization community to work on. Yeah. So thanks very much, Carter. Moving on to Ryan, who has a lot of experience of using interactive visualization in live facilitated shows, but also using the software to do planetarium shows as a production tool. And also reaching out to other domains with interactive experiences. So would you like to explain a little bit how you work with this, and also perhaps mention some of the wishes that you have for the future? Yeah.
Absolutely, and I think Jackie and Carter both outlined tremendously how powerful these immersive experiences are for presenting astronomical and planetary science content. In fact, the American Geophysical Union conferences in San Francisco used to be in San Francisco every year, and we would host a planetarium night as part of that, which Carter frequently attended. And early on, it was actually just kind of a few people, sort of stragglers, coming over to the dome. And the conversations that emerged out of that, I think, are really incredible. We leverage some of that for production, but I think that what we're interested in exploring, and what we had hoped to explore, right as we shut down for the pandemic, was an idea that I think Dana kind of referenced as well, of this. I think what's amazing about this space is that it opens your mind to conversations. It creates context for what you're looking at, first of all, so that you're not just looking at some postage stamp image of Mars, you're visiting it like Anders is right now with Mars right behind him. And that changes the context in which you can have conversations. So for example, thanks to Carter, we invited Don Wilhelms, a geologist from Apollo, to come in and see the lunar terrain in the dome, and he was telling us to go in different places because he had never seen the data like that. We similarly hosted Jeff Moore and Eldar Noe to have a conversation, and then we actually made a public talk out of that. They just had a conversation flying around Mars talking about what they're seeing. And so I think this kind of goes to one of the things that you talk about a lot, Anders, which is this continuum of exploration and explanation. And so we've focused a lot on explanation and on creating immersive experiences for the general public. And what I have been hoping to do more and more is to bring the dome into as a place where you can have conversations, as we've had around planetary science and astronomy in domes. But for us, again, because we are an institution very focused on environmental topics, I'm really interested in seeing how we can not just do, I mean, certainly there's GIS and all of that's great, which we kind of have the tools to do right now, but to bring, and again, as Dana mentioned, a community of people in there. It doesn't have to fill the dome, but a group of people to have conversations around data that potentially affects their lives, choices that you need to make around sustainability decisions or resiliency decisions in a community. Those are the kinds of things that we're trying to leverage. We're going to start out actually in February with a lecture about brain science, where we're working with the University of California, San Francisco, to bring some of their real-time, it's called Glass Brain. It's built on Unity. And although it's gone through kind of ups and downs of development, we're going to integrate it into the planetarium system. And that's the kind of work that I think a lot of the people in the visualization community, when we've attended VIS in the past, the kind of conversations that I found really exciting is how we can think about the tools that will, because we built this all out really well for planetariums and for astronomy and planetary science, how can we, first of all, think about the hardware infrastructure that allows for a more graceful and fluid integration of this content into our domes? And then how can we build the tools that allow a researcher to overcome the barrier of having to learn a new tool, but to use something that they already are familiar with to come into the dome and either present to the public or engage in a conversation with other scientists or with other stakeholders. And those are the kind of things that we're really interested in exploring right now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thanks very much for all of those statements here, really bringing up some of the main topics in going to the planetarium with your data and experiencing that and being immersed. At this point, this is a unique opportunity not only for the audience to listen to you, but also for you to pose questions and give priorities to the visualization community. We have IEEE VIS in front of you and developers, experts on visualization. So what will be your top priorities in terms of what should these researchers be working on to promote the use of the planetarium, and in particular in your cases? So anyone who wants to say something, I know Carter has a long list of things that he wants us to work on, but well, if you have to pick one or two of these things, what would you like us to work on?
One simple one.
Ryan, first.
Many planetariums can now simply ingest, if you can render out a fisheye image, many planetariums, let's say 4K ideally, or more, and many planetariums can just ingest that and then do the real-time split of on a multi-projector system on the dome. And so that's something that we've been working with, again, the UCSF team to get that part of their software working well with our dome. But that's a simple kind of low-hanging fruit. Just think about what a fisheye projection would look like.
Yeah, just to echo that, right now we have the new codec, the H265, which you can do 4K MP4s, and I can bring it straight into my dome. And that doesn't have to necessarily be a fisheye. It can be equirectangular or for a 360 view, say on YouTube. And a lot of places are actually doing that now. And I could easily take that format and bring it into my system anyway in my planetarium.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So right, either as playback or as streaming real time. Both of those work.
Yeah. You know, we were toying with the idea of actually using my new laptop with a 3080 GPU here to actually just render straight from the laptop into the dome, which is probably possible to do. Carter, you have your long list.
Well, I think, the items. I think there's a sort of state change is happening currently. And thanks to collaborations, Anders kicked off the Dagstuhl study 2 years ago now, but I guess. This is data flow and how we get data from astronomical research in this case, to the dome with ease. And there's also been the data to dome movement, Mark and Tom and others have presented today, Kachun, and we're all concerned about this. And Jackie can speak to this too, but Alyssa Goodman at Center for Astrophysics at Harvard has been pushing this means using this tool called GLUE that can create data flows, from the tools that the scientists are used to using to the ability to see it in the dome. David Spergel, who runs the Center for Computational Astrophysics in New York, we had a conference that they sponsored, and he said, "Insight. I'm not sure I gain insight from data visualization. I need this proven to me." And when Jackie held the Gaia Gaia science in the domes, million database of stars, that David arrived, and I was like, "Wow, David, you came. Are you going to gain insight?" And he was excited after what he saw in the dome, and he was excited by this conversation that Ryan talks about. That you have all, what is it, Jackie? You have like 100 scientists in there. I'll let you take off on this, but that David Spergel was convinced. I have a great respect for David Spergel as an astrophysicist, as a cosmologist, but that he sort of came over to the side that this is a useful tool for scientists to convene under, and this is not so it's decision makers, as Ryan points out, but that this is a new development, really, to basically grease the axle to get the data, from the scientists, and just have an ease to put it into the dome, which we've struggled with in productions and developing open space and things like this that we have to cherry pick. But now to have a greater fluency between those in research and those, gaining the conversation between those in research. So I think this is an exciting force.
If I'll just jump in with one quick sentiment on this too, sure. which is that Carter's right. There was this moment where one of these lead people in astrophysics had doubts about it. And then once we tailored a bit of that presentation also to make sure it was appealing to the science that David was going to get excited about. So some of that, because the ease of being able to see right away, oh, wow, yeah, I get it. Like I can see this big data set that I was working on and how it relates to these other data sets and the structures that I'm seeing. It was a really good, powerful moment. But I wanted to promote this timely thing that's happening, which is next week on November 4th, there's going to be the release of the decadal survey for astronomy and astrophysics. And several of us here worked on a paper, which Anders had this great acronym for ideas, immersive dome experiences for accelerating science. And in it, we did suggest this thing that could go into the decadal survey. And I can't wait to just Google that however many page document and see if the word planetarium shows up somewhere. Just one word planetarium will be a big deal. That is part of their recommendation for what we should be considering for funding opportunities over the next 10 years. And that is that the translation from the research scientists, like somebody like me with the one hat on that does, I'm just unique because I sit in both places, to the point where you're sitting in the dome looking at your data. There's a lot of professions in between you and that to get you in there a lot or on that path. And that I'd like to see more opportunities for a VIS person to call up somebody like me and be like, is there a job somewhere that I could work with you, do research with you, and then be in the planetarium? Because you may have skills that I need. I want development. I want somebody that understands the hardware. I want somebody that understands the actual physical place that we're going into, an engineer. And I'd like that to mesh together.
Cool. Very good. We're almost running out of time here. This is a very nice conversation here, but we do have a couple of questions here that I would like to get some quick answers to from the audience here. One of the questions that sort of resonates with what you're talking about, Jackie, is it possible to link domain exploratory tools with dome projection tools? And I guess I know your answer to that one.
I think there definitely is. And I would like to be able to do that more. So if this is somebody, I'll just answer quick. If this is somebody should write me, so find my email and send me inquisitions as well, because I am looking for people that can do these exact things right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Another question here that's more on the production pipeline is, how long or complex is the pipeline to go from using a dome theater for data exploration to having a content ready for public science communication based on this data? Is it similar to developing a computer animation feature film, i.e. a rather longer production time frame? And I guess all of you have the experience of doing this. Dana, do you want to pick up on that one?
I think it just really depends on the project. We've had people bring in data and we were able to put it in right away. But then there's other data sets that are just need a little bit more manipulation to go onto the dome. I'm sure someone else could speak to it.
Yeah. Ryan, you have experience of this too?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. It's sort of variable. I think one of the things that we've tried to do is use the real-time systems as a way of kind of testing out ideas for the storytelling. So figuring out, how do you talk about this topic? So like asteroids is the first one that comes to mind. We did a full-up planetarium show about asteroids. It's relatively straightforward to get the various data in there, but figuring out the representation that's going to make sense to audiences. When I talked about this with one colleague, he compared it to Laurel and Hardy, or to, I'm sorry, the Three Stooges. He said, they would do their live shows before they put anything on film, and they would test out their jokes and make sure they work. Similarly, testing out the data representations that make sense to people in the story that's going to make it work, I find is the time-consuming part. Making it look beautiful is straightforward once you know what you want to do.
Thank you. We are running out of time. I would just like to thank all of the panelists and all of the speakers in this session for joining in and providing us with your insights and experiences of using dome theaters and planetariums for data visualization. It's been very good. And I would like to have the conversation going on between the visualization community and the users and the people who have planetariums. So if you're a visualization person, look up the nearest planetarium, go there and start visualizing your data in there. As a final comment here, I would like to invite Alex Bock, one of the key people behind the Open Space project and also the organizer of the Spotlight, to give us some final words. Alex.
Yeah, thank you, Anders. Basically, you took my words right out of my mouth. Like if you remember back to Mark's beginning, there are like over 3,000 planetariums in the world, so that there's a very big chance that there's a good planetarium with very capable presentation staff and very interested people very close to you. And I can just urge everyone who's involved with any kind of visualization research to reach out to your closest planetarium and get in touch. Planetariums are fantastic environments to be in, both as a presenter, but also as a member of the audience and as a researcher as well, because you're going to see things in your data that you have never seen before. It's basically like VR on steroids, because you're looking at it with multiple people at the same time. And it's just, yeah, I don't really have anything more to say, because we originally had planned like 10 minutes in the end, but the Q&A went on for such a long time and really good questions, so that there was no really need for me to jump in here. So that was basically all I had to say. Like, look up your closest planetarium, get in touch. Those planetarium folks, they're really excited to hear from researchers too, just as much as you think might be interested in using their services.
And also it's more easy to do partnerships from a longer distance now, especially with COVID and Zoom and everything, and smaller file sizes. So I wouldn't be discouraged if the local planetarium doesn't have the capabilities or the interest, reach out to someone else.
Great. So yeah, I think that basically concludes our application spotlight. I just want to thank all of the participants for their active participation and very good discussion. I put the links to everyone in the Discord chat, so if you want to reach out to anyone, feel free to do so. Otherwise, Anders, Mark.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay, I guess we're off air. Yeah.
Seems so.
Yeah, the virtual page has now switched, but if anyone gets a hold of the YouTube video, they can still see this part. So
that's fine. Yeah. Okay, there we go. Okay, thanks. I think it went well. Yeah. What do you think, Mark?
Yeah. No, I'm happy. Yeah. I think in the panel discussion, everybody talked for so long. You kind of had.
Yeah. They didn't answer my questions. They just had their statements.
which is fine, right? It was good. Like I think it was a good idea to cut down the final segment. I think it was just more interesting to hear what they had to say.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I think it would have been nicer to have more of a discussion going on towards the end here. I think we were just getting going when we ran out of time. I think, yeah. But that's the way it is sometimes. Yeah. Yes, but I think we made the points, and I think we really marketed the use of the planetarium to the VIS community, and I hope that's going to have some effect. So I think it might. I'm sure it's worth our time.
It wasn't logged on. What was our attendance like? Did we have?
I don't know. It's hard to know. I mean, you have to look at the YouTube. I don't know where you get the attendance.
The YouTube doesn't really work for this setup.
Really
We'll get an attendance number
eventually,
probably tomorrow. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's basically the people that had the virtual session open. It's the way the streaming works, that all of the people that were watching on the virtual session, they show up as one view, not each, but as combined on the YouTube stream.
Yeah, well, at some point I want to pick your brain about, especially with the IPS virtual stuff, like how this whole thing was put together. And,
sure.
We see that some of it's on GitHub and all that, but it'd be.
Yeah. Alex is the master on doing this.
It's a team effort. But yeah, sure.
Commercialize your solution, right?
Yeah, maybe. I hope that that's not going to be necessary soon anymore.
That's right.
But yeah, definitely. Like we can have a chat about it. I can run you through what we're studying, what we did for this one.
Because like St. Petersburg, we're going to do, hybrid.
Mm-hmm.
People have gotten used to this, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. I think we need to.
Yeah. Thank you.
I hope it was okay that I showed a few slides on the Norrköping setup.
That was great.
I felt that it would have been weird to have all the others showing their setups and the organizers didn't. So I just during the talks I put those slides. I wasn't intending to that. I was just put cut and paste job to just provide them with the context where Alex and I are sitting. So,
I think making the point that this is a serious thing.
Right.
I think really helps.
That's good.
Great. All right. See you later.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Thanks
we
again.
we should keep talking, Mark, and also preparing for the meeting next year in June. Yeah. And as soon as there's a possibility to travel again, for me it's overdue to come over to the US and visit New York and maybe just get on the train down to you as well. And both Alex and I can probably that would be great. And maybe we can compensate for the terrible Teams talk by giving you a proper open space talk. Yeah. All right.
Cool.
All right. Okay.
Cool.
Thanks so much.
Yep.
Are we having dinner? Yeah. Okay.
Hello. Are you the session chair?
Yes, I am. Andrew, your name is Andrew. Hello.
Yes. Hello.
Yeah, I'm Alex. Yeah. So I will start with the presentation brief introduction, but it will actually be shorter than 10 minutes. So in the program it says 10 minutes, but it's going to be more like 4 minutes because I don't really want to, spend too much time on the introduction, and there are lots of presentations. So I just want to make more time for questions and for presentations themselves. So is that okay? If my introduction is only 4 minutes and then jump straight to the first presentation? Yeah. Okay. So are you the one in charge of starting the videos?
Yes.
Okay. So you'll just listen. I guess you'll just listen for me, and then when I say when I introduce the speaker, you will turn on the video, right?
Okay. Yeah. So I manually switch between live sessions and videos.
Yes.
So usually going into the video, I wait for you to say like welcome or whatever.
Yes.
To stop talking.
Okay, excellent.
And then when we go from videos to Q&A, I will give a countdown, which I'll probably explain later because other people should hear it too.
Right.
Yeah.
And then I'll be watching. I guess I'll be watching the Zoom stream, right? Not the. So what do you recommend to watch the for the chair to watch the Zoom stream or the YouTube stream, the dashboard?
I think it's usually recommended. So what I do is I have the Zoom stream and then the video on mute for YouTube just to see where it's going. I guess you just need to know when it's live because there's a delay.
Okay.
But yeah, probably the Zoom because if you play the video, you'll have echo sometimes.
Right. So I'll play the video without sound in the dashboard, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
The video is also delayed by like a couple seconds.
Okay.
Which is, yeah.
Right. Okay, great. Thank you. And then towards the end, I will be sharing my screen. Is that okay in Zoom when I present the awards?
Yeah, I made you co-host. Can you test that works?
Oh, sure. Let me try. Actually, I'm going to share the very last slide because let's see. So can you see my slide? It just says the link for the 2022 contest.
Yeah, I see the full app.
Yes, just the app, not the screen, but just the preview app, just the slides.
Yes.
But that's fine. Yeah, you see the controls. That's no problem. There won't be a lot of text. It's just a few words per each slide. So.
Okay. Is this after the last?
No, this is when I present the awards. So we're going to have 9 presentations in total. And the very first presentation is going to be a longer talk. So it's 10 minutes and 40 seconds. And then after that, we have 7 presentations from contestants. And after that, I will introduce the awards. So I'll introduce not introduce, but I'll present the awards. And then the very last presentation is going to be from a preview of the 2022 contest. So this live part with awards is going to be just before the very last presentation.
Okay, yeah, I'm just making sure that there's in the thing I have, there's a competition results, which is live, and I think that's it.
Yes, yes, that's right. Okay, great, thank you.
Hello.
Hello, hi, Lucas.
How are you?
Good, good. Nice to meet you. And
nice.
Team, also welcome. Nice to meet you virtually, not in person, but virtually. But yeah. So thank you for joining us today. It should be a very good session.
So we have to test audio or anything here?
No, I don't think so. So I mean, right now I can hear you just fine. So I think your part is just going to be the Q&A after your presentation. And so what you need, so for your presentation, what you probably want to do is you want to watch your presentation via Zoom. So turn the video off, sorry, the sound off on the YouTube stream. That's very important. So there's no echo. Just watch the Zoom presentation. And so the host, Andrew, he will turn off your live presentation maybe 30 seconds before the Q&A, and then I think we'll know when. Well, I'll ask for questions, and then I will pass the questions to you. So I'll be reading questions from Slido and from Discord, and then you'll be answering questions live. So, and I think we'll have about 2 minutes for questions for each presenter.
Great. Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, how many people are going to be in the QA? Because I should.
Well, so it's one presenter for each presentation, right? But there could be, I guess in some cases, there could be maybe 2 or I don't know, 3 presenters up to, but I assume it's just one person who'll be answering Q&A for each presentation.
Okay. So yeah, and if you're wondering for the QA, if your camera's on, you should be visible, and otherwise you shouldn't. So if it's your turn, you have your camera on. Also, it looks like in the schedule, all the sessions have about a minute of Q&A.
Yeah, so in the session, in the
time,
yeah, in the schedule, we have 8 minutes for each presentation in the contest, right? So in each presentation in the contest will have 8 minutes, but all of them are around, so most of them are around 6 minutes plus, so under 7 minutes for sure. So we have, and some of them are shorter, so we have 1 or 2 minutes, probably around 2 minutes on average for the Q&A for each talk.
Yeah, actually EarthGAN is 7.5 minutes.
Yeah, okay, yeah. But we'll have, so the time we'll save on the short introduction will allow for 2-minute Q&A for each presentation.
Oh, and can everyone else who's here test that their camera and audio works by like saying something?
Hey, this is Tim.
Hi.
You see me? That works?
Yeah. Yes, it works. Yeah, we can hear you and see you.
Hi, this is Sudhanshu.
Hi, Sudhanshu. Yeah, you sound great.
Hi.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Hossein.
Hello.
Excellent. Yeah, everything is working. Okay, Marina. Yeah. Hi, Marina.
Hi.
Great.
I'm actually also here. I'm just still eating, so I don't know.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. No, you sound great.
Mm-hmm.
Lucas, it's good.
And then we also have Jonathan Bridge.
Yeah.